Nobody knows what the biggest controversy of the 2026 World Cup will be. Not yet. But if there is one match that seems almost designed to create chaos, suspicion, and endless debate, it might be USA versus Paraguay. Because sometimes controversy isn't created by bad intentions. Sometimes it's created by pressure. And few things in football create more pressure than a host nation playing in front of its own fans. On paper, this looks like a normal World Cup group stage match. Two nations, 3 points at stake, 90 minutes. But beneath the surface, there are warning signs everywhere. The kind of warning signs that often go unnoticed until after the damage is done. And if history tells us anything, one controversial decision could transform this game from a football match into the defining argument of the entire tournament. The strange part is that nobody wants that to happen. Not FIFA, not the referees, not the players, not even the fans. Yet that may be exactly why people are nervous. Because when expectations become impossible to satisfy, controversy becomes almost unavoidable. The United States enters this World Cup carrying something that most teams never experience: the burden of being the host. At first glance, hosting seems like an advantage. The crowds are on your side, the travel is easier, the stadiums feel familiar. The atmosphere becomes an extra player. But there is another side to hosting, a darker side. Every decision suddenly carries political weight. Every referee call becomes suspicious. Every favorable moment gets dissected from every angle, and every mistake threatens to become an international incident. History has shown this repeatedly. When a host nation benefits from a controversial decision, people rarely see it as coincidence. They see something else. They see influence. They see pressure. They see favoritism. Whether any of those things are true often becomes irrelevant. Perception becomes reality. And once that perception takes hold, it becomes almost impossible to reverse. That is what makes matches involving host nations so dangerous. Not because anything improper is happening, but because millions of people are already prepared to believe that it is. The suspicion exists before kickoff. The accusations are waiting before the first whistle. And if one major moment arrives, those accusations can spread faster than anyone can stop them. That is where USA versus Paraguay becomes fascinating, because the conditions are already there. The atmosphere, the expectations, the pressure, the possibility, all waiting. And football has a habit of turning possibilities into headlines. What makes this situation even more complicated is the timing. The modern World Cup exists in a completely different environment than tournaments of the past. A controversial decision in previous decades might have been debated in newspapers the next morning. Now, it can become global outrage in less than 30 seconds. Before a referee has even reached halftime, millions of clips can already be circulating online. Slow motion replays, freeze frames, conspiracy theories, accusations, anger. Everyone becomes an investigator. Everyone becomes an expert. Everyone becomes a judge. And once social media picks a side, facts often struggle to catch up. That reality changes everything. Because referees know it, players know it, coaches know it, FIFA certainly knows it. Every major decision now comes with a second match being played online, a match that never truly ends, a match where evidence is constantly reinterpreted, a match where opinions harden immediately, and that second match can sometimes become bigger than the football itself. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What happens if a decisive moment favors the host nation? The answer sounds simple. People will argue. But history suggests something far larger. People will question motives. They will question processes. They will question legitimacy. And those questions may linger for years. The irony is that modern football was supposed to solve many of these problems. VAR arrived with enormous promises. Technology would reduce mistakes, Technology would create fairness. Technology would eliminate controversy. At least that was the idea. Reality turned out to be much more complicated because VAR did not eliminate arguments. In many ways, it created new ones. Fans expected certainty. Instead, they discovered interpretation. And interpretation remains football's most dangerous territory. A handball can look obvious to one viewer and completely accidental to another. A foul can appear clear from one angle and invisible from another. An offside can be technically correct while still feeling unfair. Technology can provide information. It cannot eliminate emotion. And football is driven by emotion. That is why VAR controversies continue to dominate conversations long after matches end. Not because technology failed, but because humans still have to make the final judgment. And whenever humans make judgments, somebody feels wronged. Now imagine that happening during USA versus Paraguay. Imagine a late penalty. Imagine a disputed red card. Imagine an offside decision decided by centimeters. Imagine a winning goal standing after a lengthy review. Suddenly, the match is no longer about football. It becomes a debate, a trial, an investigation conducted by millions of people simultaneously. And the host nation would inevitably find itself at the center of that storm. Paraguay understands this reality too. They know the environment they are entering. They know every crowd reaction will be amplified, every referee decision scrutinized, every emotional moment analyzed. That creates its own psychological pressure. Because teams do not simply compete against opponents. They compete against narratives. And narratives can influence behavior in subtle ways. Players begin anticipating unfairness. Fans begin expecting bias. Coaches become more suspicious. The atmosphere becomes charged before anything controversial has even occurred. That tension changes the way people interpret events. A routine call suddenly feels suspicious. An honest mistake appears deliberate. Neutral moments become evidence. And once that mindset develops, controversy becomes easier to create. Sometimes all it takes is one spark. The most dangerous controversies are not always the obvious ones. People imagine scandals beginning with shocking incidents, but often they begin with uncertainty, a 50-50 decision, a questionable challenge, a borderline call, something small, something debatable, something that leaves room for interpretation. That uncertainty creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled with theories, with assumptions, with accusations. The less clear the situation becomes, the more powerful the controversy grows. That is why FIFA worries about perception almost as much as reality. Because perception shapes public trust, and public trust is fragile, especially during a World Cup, especially involving a host nation, especially in an era where every frame of footage can be analyzed endlessly. There is another layer to this story that makes USA versus Paraguay particularly intriguing. Expectation. Not just expectation from fans. Expectation from an entire country. The United States has invested enormous energy into presenting this World Cup as a landmark moment, a showcase, a celebration, a statement about football's future in America. That creates pressure unlike anything most teams experience, because every result carries symbolic importance. A victory feels larger, a defeat feels heavier, a controversy feels explosive. Players understand this, whether they admit it publicly or not. They know millions of people are watching. They know every action will be analyzed, and pressure can influence behavior in unpredictable ways. Sometimes pressure produces brilliance. Sometimes it produces mistakes. Sometimes it produces moments that nobody saw coming. The same is true for referees. Referees are trained to ignore noise, to focus on facts, to remain impartial. But referees are still human beings. Human beings working inside packed stadiums filled with emotion. Human beings making split-second decisions under extraordinary scrutiny. Human beings aware that one decision could define their careers. That reality does not automatically create bias, but it creates pressure, and pressure changes environments. That is why football's biggest controversies often emerge from situations where pressure is highest. The World Cup represents the highest pressure environment in the sport. Add a host nation, add global attention, add modern social media, and suddenly the ingredients become impossible to ignore. Yet perhaps the most fascinating possibility is that nothing controversial happens at all, because even that may not prevent controversy. If the match is close, every decision could still be dissected afterward, every challenge reviewed, every whistle questioned, every replay analyzed. People might spend days searching for evidence of favoritism, or evidence that favoritism never existed. The argument itself could become the story. That is the strange power of expectation. Sometimes people prepare so intensely for controversy that they create it themselves. And football history contains countless examples of matches remembered less for what happened than for what people believed happened. Belief can be incredibly powerful, especially when national pride is involved, especially during a World Cup, especially when emotions overwhelm objectivity. This is why the stakes feel larger than 90 minutes, because the consequences extend beyond the scoreboard. One controversial moment could shape narratives for the rest of the tournament. Every future USA match would be viewed differently. Every referee decision re-examined through a new lens. Every success questioned by critics. Every failure magnified by supporters. The ripple effects could be enormous. And that possibility is exactly what makes this match so compelling. Not because controversy is guaranteed, far from it. The most likely outcome may still be a normal football match. But the possibility exists. And sometimes possibility is enough. Because football's greatest dramas often begin long before anything dramatic actually occurs. They begin with tension, with suspicion, with unanswered questions, with circumstances that feel uncomfortable. And few World Cup matches arrive carrying as many potential storylines as this one. As kickoff approaches, everyone involved faces the same challenge. Players must control emotions. Referees must withstand pressure. Fans must resist assumptions. Observers must separate evidence from speculation. Simple goals, extremely difficult tasks. Because once the ball starts rolling, logic often gives way to emotion. And emotion has always been football's most powerful force. Years from now, USA versus Paraguay may be remembered as a completely ordinary World Cup game. A result. A scoreline. Nothing more. But there is another possibility. A possibility that explains why so many people are paying attention. A possibility that explains why FIFA, referees, players, and supporters all understand the risks. Because if one critical moment arrives, if one major decision changes everything, if one controversial call determines the outcome, then this match could instantly become the game everyone is arguing about. Not because of what was proven, not because of what was known, but because of what people believed. And in World Cup history, some of the biggest controversies were built on that exact foundation. The uncertainty, the suspicion, the question that never fully disappears. What really happened? That is why this match matters. Not simply because of the teams involved, not simply because of the points at stake, but because it sits at the intersection of pressure, perception, technology, expectation, and national pride. A place where football becomes something bigger than football. A place where one decision can reshape reputations. A place where a single moment can become part of World Cup history. Whether that moment ever arrives remains unknown. But if it does, the debate may last far longer than the match itself. And that is exactly why USA versus Paraguay could become the most controversial match of the 2026 World Cup.